At the Christmas dinner table, my stepdad shoved me and said, "This spot is for my real daughter, move." I ended up on the floor in front of the entire family. What he didn't realize was that night everything was about to change for him. By the time he woke up the next morning, you won't believe how one Christmas dinner, meant to be a time of joy, completely shattered my world and ignited a fire inside me that would ultimately bring down a criminal empire. I was sprawled on the cold hardwood floor, utterly humiliated, in front of 23 shocked family members. My stepfather, Richard, had just thrown me down, his face twisted in disgust. Then he uttered words that didn't just break me, but changed everything. "My name is Connor," and in that moment, all I could feel was the icy bite of the polished wood against my cheek and the crushing weight of public shame. Richard stood over me, adjusting his expensive wool sweater as if nothing had happened. His eyes, though, held a pure, venomous disgust. Then came his voice, sharp and cutting, that echoed in the deafening silence of the dining room. "Connor should eat in the kitchen," he announced to everyone, "since family dinner is for real family members." The sheer audacity, the cold, calculated cruelty of it. It still makes my blood boil to remember. I slowly, shakily, picked myself up, dusting off my khakis, my hands trembling. The antique grandfather clock in the corner seemed to tick like a bomb, each second amplifying the unbearable tension. My mother, Patricia, sat frozen in her burgundy velvet chair, her knuckles white as she clutched her cloth napkin. But she wouldn't meet my gaze. Her eyes were fixed on the elaborate centerpiece she'd spent hours arranging, pretending I wasn't even there. Richard, meanwhile, smoothed his perfectly groomed salt and pepper beard, that familiar air of authority he used in his plumbing supply business deals now directed at me, at all of us. "The boy can eat with the help," he dismissed, gesturing towards the kitchen. But then, a lifeline. My Aunt Susan, my mom's younger sister, a pediatric nurse, rose from her seat near the bay window. Her emerald green dress rustled, her silver bracelet jingled, a small rebellion against the silence. "Richard, that's completely inappropriate," she said, her brown eyes flashing with a fury I hadn't seen before. "Connor has been part of this family for 8 years. Richard's laugh was a cold, calculated thing as he adjusted his gold cufflinks. "Being part of a family means more than just living under the same roof, Susan. It means blood, loyalty, and respect. Connor has shown none of those things lately." My face was burning, a mix of shame and rage, as I walked toward the kitchen. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my cousin Jacob, a sophomore at the local community college, staring down at his untouched plate, avoiding eye contact. Papa Joe, my mother's father, a Vietnam veteran who'd worked at the Ford plant for decades, shook his weathered head. His flannel shirt and worn jeans were a stark contrast to Richard's designer clothes, a visual representation of the decency Richard lacked. The kitchen smelled of roasted vegetables and fresh rolls, but my stomach was churning with humiliation. I grabbed a flimsy paper plate from the stack near the industrial-sized refrigerator Richard had insisted on installing. The fine china in the dining room, the crystal glasses catching the chandelier light, seemed to mock me, making the disposable plate feel like yet another deliberate insult. Through the thin walls of our colonial house, I could hear Richard's booming voice, regaling everyone with stories of his business expansion, his new plumbing supply store, never missing a chance to remind everyone of his success. For 8 years, since I was 14, I had desperately tried to earn Richard's approval. He married my mother 2 years after my biological father tragically died in a construction accident when I was 12. My dad's life insurance had left us secure, with money for my college education. But then Richard came along, and my mom thought she'd found security for both of us. I joined the high school football team because Richard was an assistant coach, enduring 2 seasons of him screaming at me, calling me weak and pathetic in front of teammates. When I showed interest in art, he scoffed, pushing me into business, claiming creative pursuits were for people who couldn't handle real work. Every summer since I turned 16, I slaved away at his main store, organizing inventory, loading heavy pipes for customers, all for a measly $6 an hour. He'd say it was more than I deserved for unskilled labor. I never complained. I just wanted him to see me as worthy. As a son, standing alone in that kitchen, picking at a slice of ham on my paper plate, I heard Richard's voice from his home office, suddenly hushed, urgent. Something in his tone made me gravitate to the doorway connecting the kitchen to his workspace. It was slightly ajar, and I saw him pacing behind his massive oak desk, back to me. I need everything transferred to Emma's name before December 31st, he whispered into his phone. The audit team is getting more aggressive, and I can't risk having these assets tied to my name much longer. He paused, listening. No, she doesn't know anything about it yet. I'll handle Emma when she gets back from college. The girl trusts me completely. My blood ran cold. I pressed myself against the kitchen wall, straining to hear more. Listen, Frank, Richard continued. I've been liquidating assets for months. The cash is offshore, but the business properties need to look legitimate. Emma's the perfect cover because she's been away at school and won't ask questions. Emma was his 20-year-old daughter from his first marriage, studying art therapy 3 hours away. Her sudden return for Christmas, and Richard's insistence she sit in my chair, suddenly felt sickeningly calculated. I heard fragments: IRS investigation, hidden income, plausible deniability. My hands trembled. This wasn't just about my humiliation. This was about something far darker, something that could destroy my mother, Emma, everyone. The conversation ended abruptly. I heard his footsteps. I scrambled back to the kitchen island, pretending to eat. He emerged from his office, face flushed, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed with suspicion. He glanced at me, as if sensing something, but said nothing before returning to the dining room. The laughter and conversation from the family now felt hollow, distant. The humiliation of being pushed to the floor? It was nothing compared to the magnitude of what I'd just discovered. Richard wasn't just a cruel stepfather. He was a criminal, planning to use his own daughter as an unwitting pawn. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I'd never known. The pale winter sunlight filtered through my curtains, illuminating the trophies and certificates I'd earned trying to please Richard. Football awards, business honor society, perfect attendance at his store, all meaningless now that I knew who he truly was. I called my college roommate, Marcus, a computer science major who could find a digital needle in a haystack. Dude, that's seriously messed up, Marcus said, his voice crackling over the phone. But if this guy's running a scam, there's a digital trail. These older business owners always think they're smarter than technology, but they leave breadcrumbs everywhere. Marcus taught me what to look for: unusual money transfers, income discrepancies, documents revealing illegal activities. He even showed me how to access Richard's business computers remotely. That afternoon, I volunteered to help with inventory at the main store. Richard was pleased, finally showing some work ethic. He grumbled, handing me the warehouse keys. Maybe there's hope for you yet. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 4 hours, I meticulously examined financial records. What I found was far worse than I'd imagined. Richard's plumbing supply business was a front for an elaborate 5-year tax evasion scheme. He systematically underreported sales, keeping 60% as untaxed cash, using 2 sets of books. He was evading taxes on nearly $400,000 a year. But it didn't stop there. He paid employees under the table, avoiding payroll taxes and workers' compensation. Several workers were making less than minimum wage, their time cards falsified. The most sickening discovery was his employee benefits scam. He collected workers' comp premiums from paychecks, but never purchased the coverage. If any of his workers were injured, they'd be completely uninsured. Then came the deepest cut. I found bank statements hidden in his desk. My college fund, established with my father's life insurance, was supposed to have nearly $68,000. It now held less than $12,000. Richard had been systematically draining it, funneling the money into his own accounts. He'd forged my mother's signature on countless withdrawal authorizations. Patricia, trusting him with the finances, had unknowingly signed away my future. My hands shook as I photographed document after document with my phone. He wasn't just stealing from the government or his employees. He was stealing from his own family. From me. That evening, I called Detective Ray Morrison, a family friend who'd worked with my dad and was even a pallbearer at his funeral. When I explained, the concern in his voice was immediate. "Connor, I'm glad you reached out," Ray said. "We've actually had our eye on Richard's businesses for months. The IRS noticed some irregularities. They're building a case, but need more concrete evidence. His employees are too scared to talk." Ray explained that Richard had a reputation for ruthless retaliation. But you're in a unique position, he continued. You have access. If you work with us, we can bring him down. The thought of betraying my mother's husband felt overwhelming. But then I remembered his contempt, the years of psychological abuse, the cheated workers. I'll do whatever it takes, I told Ray. But I need to make sure my mother and Emma don't get hurt. They're innocent. Ray assured me the investigation would focus on Richard, not his unwitting family. He connected me with Agent Sarah Chun, a federal financial crime specialist. Lying in bed that night, listening to my mother and Richard arguing down the hall, I realized the humiliated boy from Christmas dinner was gone. Richard had underestimated me, assuming I'd remain passive, grateful for his scraps of acceptance. He was about to learn that sometimes the people you dismiss as weak are actually gathering strength, waiting for the perfect moment to fight back. 3 days after Christmas, I met Agent Chun at a diner. She was professional, warm, and immediately put me at ease. What you've uncovered is impressive, she said, reviewing my photo evidence. But we need a broader pattern to make our case airtight. Marcus drove down from Detroit to help. With his laptop and specialized software, he remotely accessed Richard's network after hours. What we found was a sophisticated operation far beyond simple tax evasion. Richard used a complex web of LLCs to hide ownership, shuffling profits to entities, showing losses to minimize taxes. But the most shocking revelation was his theft of payroll taxes. He'd collected Social Security and Medicare taxes from employees, but never forwarded the money to the federal government. Over 5 years, nearly $200,000 stolen. Agent Chun explained this directly harmed workers, many nearing retirement, who had no idea their accounts were empty. We also found evidence of insurance fraud, filing false claims for damaged inventory, laundering payouts through his businesses. And then, the final, crushing blow. Marcus discovered Richard had been intercepting my college scholarship checks. Merit-based scholarships from high school, never reaching my education accounts. Richard had set up a mail forwarding service, cashing them himself with forged signatures and fake IDs. This is federal mail fraud on top of everything else, Agent Chin noted. Interfering with scholarship distributions is a serious federal crime. But the most disturbing discovery involved Emma. Richard had prepared legal documents to transfer ownership of all his business assets to her, making her the apparent owner of companies worth over $2 million. His plan was brilliant in its callousness. If the feds closed in, he'd claim to be a mere employee of her businesses. Any criminal charges would fall on Emma, who knew nothing. Richard would quietly disappear with millions hidden offshore. Agent Chin's expression turned grim. He's setting up his own daughter to take the fall, she said quietly. Emma could face decades in federal prison for crimes she doesn't even know were committed. The evidence also showed he was preparing to frame me, using my computer access at his business and forged documents to make it look like I was involved. He's been planning this for months, Marcus observed. Every time you worked there, every time you accessed the computers, he was building a case against you. The realization that Richard had been manipulating me, even as he planned to destroy my future, was almost too much to bear. Agent Chin outlined the next steps, gather more evidence, discreetly. She gave me recording equipment. The key is to get him talking about his plans, she explained. Recorded admissions are powerful. Time was running out. That evening, I overheard Richard on the phone, more agitated than ever. The timeline has moved up, he snapped. I need everything finalized before New Year's Day. The audit team is asking specific questions. Then, the chilling part. Emma signs the papers tomorrow, and then we disappear. I've already booked the flights to Montana. My brother's ranch is isolated enough. He planned to flee the country within days, not weeks. I immediately contacted Agent Chen. The federal task force was ready, but needed one final piece. A recorded confession clearly establishing his criminal intent and his plan to frame Emma and me. We have one chance to get this right, she warned. If Richard suspects, he'll destroy evidence and vanish. I had less than 24 hours. The next morning, I realized confronting Richard alone would be foolish. I needed allies. My first call was to Betty Morrison, Richard's bookkeeper and Detective Ray Morrison's sister-in-law. She was a quiet woman, always nervous around Richard. She initially refused to talk. Richard would destroy me. But when I explained about the stolen employee benefits and fraudulent insurance claims, her resolve crumbled. "I've known something was wrong for years," she whispered, her small living room filled with photos of her grandchildren. "Richard would give me 2 sets of numbers. When I asked, he said I was too stupid to understand sophisticated accounting practices." She revealed he'd threatened to fire her and cancel her health insurance when her husband had a heart attack if she questioned him. He knew exactly how to control her. With Agent Chen's guidance, I offered Betty whistleblower protection. She had been keeping personal copies of documents, an extensive paper trail corroborating everything. My next ally came from an unexpected source, Tommy Rodriguez, one of Richard's warehouse workers. Tommy, a 45-year-old father of 3, approached me at the store. "I heard you were asking questions," he said quietly, as we stood among towering shelves of pipes. "There's some things you should know that ain't in any books." Tommy revealed Richard ran a secondary operation, selling damaged or returned merchandise to unlicensed contractors for cash, completely off the books. "He's got a whole network of guys," Tommy explained, "mostly people who work on smaller jobs and don't want permits. Richard supplies them with cheap materials and looks the other way when they cut corners." This meant Richard wasn't just stealing money. He was contributing to dangerous construction practices. Tommy had been documenting it all: photos of damaged materials, records of cash transactions, contacts for contractors. "I got kids to think about," he said. "If someone gets hurt because of defective materials Richard sold, I don't want to be the one holding the bag." Through Tommy, I connected with other employees, Maria Santos and James Patterson, who also had kept their own records of Richard's illegal activities. Agent Chun arranged for all of them to meet with federal prosecutors under protective circumstances. Each one provided crucial evidence. But my most important ally was Emma. When she returned from college that evening, I knew I had to tell her. I found her in the family room, surrounded by college textbooks and art therapy materials. The irony of her studies, using creative expression to help trauma victims, wasn't lost on me. "Emma," I began carefully, "I need to tell you something important. It's about your father and his businesses." Her initial reaction was defensive. "If this is about Christmas dinner, Connor, I'm sorry. Dad can be harsh." But as I showed her the evidence, her expression shifted from skepticism to horror, then to fierce determination. She was studying to help people, and her own father was systematically victimizing his employees and family. "He's been planning to make me responsible for all of this?" she asked, staring at the asset transfer documents. "He would let me go to prison for crimes I never even knew about." When I explained the federal investigation and the urgent timeline, Emma's decision was immediate and courageous. "I want to help," she said firmly. "My father has been lying to everyone, including me. If he thinks he can use me to escape responsibility, he's about to learn I'm not the naive little girl he thinks I am." Emma's insight into Richard's personality proved crucial. "Dad's narcissism makes him vulnerable," she observed. "If we can get him talking about how clever he's been, his ego will override his caution." With our alliance of witnesses, federal agents, and unexpected family support, we had everything. But the window was closing fast. Richard had already begun transferring assets, and his flight to Montana was scheduled for New Year's Day, just 36 hours away. Agent Chin coordinated final preparations. Detective Ray Morrison positioned local law enforcement. I prepared recording equipment. On December 30th, I woke to Richard shouting into his phone in the kitchen. His agitation was unmistakable. "The IRS audit team called yesterday," he fumed to someone. "They want a comprehensive review for early January. We have to move everything today." My heart sank. Federal investigators had inadvertently pushed him. "Emma signs the transfer papers this morning," he screamed. "And we're on a plane to Montana by tonight. I don't care what it costs to change the flights. This whole operation is compromised if we don't move now." I texted Agent Chun, then called Marcus to activate our emergency recording protocols. We'd planned for this, but the short notice was terrifying. Emma, pale but determined, was ready. "I keep thinking about all the people he's hurt," she said, applying makeup to hide her red eyes. "How could I not see what kind of person he really was?" I reassured her. Richard was a master manipulator, targeting those who wanted to trust him. "That's not a character flaw on your part," I told her. "It's evidence that you have the kind of heart he's been exploiting." But Richard's paranoia was intensifying. He'd installed new security cameras overnight, monitoring our movements. "Where have you been spending so much time lately?" he demanded when I entered the kitchen. His perfect appearance was disheveled. "I've noticed you leaving at odd hours, taking private calls." I had prepared for this. "College applications for next semester." I lied smoothly. "Financial aid offices have limited hours during winter break." His eyes narrowed. "Interesting that you would need financial aid when your college fund should have plenty of money in it." He was testing me. I forced myself to remain calm, to appear confused. "I thought it would be smart to apply for additional scholarships and grants. College costs keep going up." He seemed satisfied, but his body remained tense. The morning crawled by. Emma played her part perfectly, acting excited about the business transfer documents, secretly recording Richard's explanations. "I'm so proud you're trusting me with such important responsibilities," she said, reviewing the papers. "Can you explain exactly what these companies do?" Richard's condescending response revealed his criminal depth. "These are sophisticated structures. You don't need to understand the details. Just sign where I've marked." But Emma pressed, using her therapy training to draw him out. "I want to be a responsible business owner. What if government officials ask me questions?" His ego couldn't resist. He spent an hour explaining the complex web of shell companies, hidden assets, and fraudulent structures. Emma's hidden device captured every self-incriminating word. Meanwhile, Marcus reported that Richard had begun deleting financial records and employee files, systematic destruction of evidence. Agent Chen accelerated the task force. Search warrants were prepared. Arrest teams were positioned. But we still needed the confession to make the case airtight and protect Emma. The opportunity came that afternoon. Richard received a call that sent him into a rage. An unlicensed contractor had been arrested and mentioned Richard's name. "That idiot is going to ruin everything." Richard screamed into the phone. Now the whole off-the-books operation is compromised. Emma seized the moment. "Dad, what's wrong?" "What off-the-books operation?" Richard unleashed a tirade, detailing his tax evasion, his theft of employee benefits, his insurance fraud, and his plans to frame both Emma and me. "I've been planning this for months," he boasted angrily. "If the feds want to play games, they'll find Emma owns all the businesses and Connor had access to all the records. Let them try to prosecute a college girl and a stepson desperate for approval." The recording captured everything. But Richard then announced he was moving the flight up to 6 p.m. "Pack only essential items. We're leaving for Montana tonight." Agent Chun confirmed agents were ready, but timing was critical. If he left the house before they arrived, he might escape. At exactly 4:30 p.m., it all came together. Richard was in his office making final arrangements. Emma and I positioned ourselves in the family room, where Agent Chin's equipment would capture everything. "Dad," Emma called out, "Connor and I need to talk to you about something important before we leave for Montana." He emerged, looking harried and suspicious. "What do you two want?" he snapped. "I told you we're leaving in 90 minutes. I took a deep breath. "We know about the money you stole from my college fund," I said quietly. "We know about the tax evasion and the fake insurance claims. And we know you've been planning to frame Emma and me for your crimes." Richard's face cycled through shock, anger, calculation, and finally, a cold, venomous rage. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he said slowly. "Even if you did, there's nothing you can do about it." But Emma stepped forward, holding the asset transfer documents. "Actually, we know exactly what you've been doing," she said calmly. "And I'm not going to let you use me as your scapegoat." The recording captured every word as Richard lost control. "You think you're smart enough to understand sophisticated business operations?" he sneered. "I've been running circles around federal investigators for 5 years while you were playing with dolls and finger paints." His ego, his anger, created a perfect storm of self-incrimination. He bragged about his criminal cleverness, threatening retaliation if we interfered. "I built an empire worth millions," he ranted. "If I had to bend a few rules about taxes, that's just smart business." When I challenged him about stealing from employees, his callousness was chilling. "Those people are lucky to have jobs at all," he said contemptuously. "They're better off with cash now than promises about future benefits they'll probably never collect." Emma pressed him about the ownership transfer. "Did you really think I'd just sign papers without understanding?" Richard's laugh was cold. "You've been signing papers without reading them your entire life. Birthday cards, school permission slips. You trust your father to handle the important details while you focus on your little art projects." He went on for 30 minutes, detailing bribing inspectors, his network of unlicensed contractors, his plan to frame us. Emma owns all the businesses on paper, he said, with satisfaction. Connor had computer access. If anyone goes to prison for tax evasion, it's going to be the two of you, not me. Then, my mother, Patricia, walked into the family room, drawn by the shouting. She'd been packing. "What's going on?" she asked nervously. "Richard, why are you shouting at the children?" His response revealed the void in their marriage. "Stay out of this, Patricia. This doesn't concern you. Go back upstairs and finish packing." But I knew she deserved the truth. "Mom," I said gently, "Richard has been stealing from my college fund. He's been forging your signature on legal documents, using you to help hide his crimes." Her face went pale as I explained. When Emma showed her the forged asset transfer documents, Patricia's hands shook. "You've been lying to me about everything," she whispered, staring at Richard. "Our entire marriage has been built on deception and theft." Richard's mask finally fell away completely. "You're all too stupid to understand what I've accomplished," he screamed. "I turned 3 failing businesses into a profitable empire. I provided security for this family." His rant was interrupted by car doors slamming outside. Agent Chun, Detective Morrison, and a team of federal investigators had arrived. Richard's time was up. The look of shock and panic on his face as he realized he was trapped was something I will never forget. For the first time, I saw him for what he was, not a powerful businessman, but a terrified criminal caught in his own web. "This is impossible," he stammered, looking for an escape. "You couldn't have organized this. You're just a stupid kid who couldn't even earn a place at the family dinner table." But Emma stepped forward, with a calm dignity that surprised everyone. "No, Dad," she said clearly. "We've been working together for the past week. Connor figured out what you were doing, and I helped gather the evidence the federal agents needed to arrest you." The recording captured everything: his confessions, his threats, his plans to frame us, his complete lack of remorse. As federal agents handcuffed Richard, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction, relief, and sadness. Justice was finally being served, but it came at the cost of destroying the only family structure I had known for 8 years. Richard was led away to a federal detention facility. His criminal empire was about to collapse, but the people he had hurt would finally receive the justice they deserved. 6 months later, I sat in court as Richard was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. He'd pleaded guilty to tax evasion, mail fraud, employee benefit theft, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. The restitution alone exceeded $800,000, covering stolen employee benefits, unpaid taxes, fraudulent insurance claims, and the money taken from my college fund. His business assets were liquidated, his personal wealth seized. Betty Morrison, who testified courageously, received a settlement that allowed her husband to get the medical care he needed. She found a new job with a legitimate accounting firm. Tommy Rodriguez and the other warehouse workers received back pay and damages. Several even used their settlement money to start their own businesses, honest ones. Emma transferred to a local college, healing and specializing in art therapy for financial abuse victims. "I want to help other people who have been victimized by family members they trusted," she told me. Financial abuse is often overlooked because people assume family wouldn't deliberately hurt each other, but it's actually one of the most common forms of domestic violence. My mother, Patricia, filed for divorce and returned to school for a master's in social work. "I spent 8 years making excuses for his behavior," she admitted. "I convinced myself his criticism was care. I never recognized the psychological abuse until I saw him turn that same manipulation against you and Emma." Our house transformed. Richard's old office became a study space for Emma and me. The dining room, where he'd pushed me, now hosted weekly dinners for Betty, Tommy, and others who'd helped. Detective Ray Morrison became a regular, sharing stories of my father's integrity, helping me understand that the values I inherited were far more valuable than anything Richard could have offered. Marcus, my college roommate, became like a brother. We started a computer consulting business specializing in financial record-keeping, transparency through technology, helping honest entrepreneurs. Agent Chun became my mentor, encouraging a career in forensic accounting. "You have a natural talent for following money trails," she observed. "More importantly, you have the ethical foundation necessary." My stolen scholarship money was not only recovered but supplemented by grants, allowing me to complete my degree with honors and a clear conscience. But perhaps the most meaningful development was the relationship that grew between Emma and me. What began as a strategic alliance evolved into a genuine sibling bond. I always wanted an older brother, Emma told me as we prepared for her college graduation. I just never expected to find one in the stepbrother I had ignored for so many years. Richard tried to keep us separated because he knew we would be stronger together than apart. Richard's cruelty had ultimately been the catalyst for my transformation. The boy who was pushed to the ground had gotten back up, and through patience, planning, and courage, brought down a criminal empire. My father's legacy, once stolen, was restored, giving me an education in justice and morality no classroom could provide. I learned that real strength comes not from seeking approval from powerful people, but from having the courage to challenge them when they abuse their power. Today, I work as a financial crimes investigator for a federal law enforcement agency, helping expose and prosecute those who steal from employees, evade taxes, and betray trust. Every case reminds me to speak up, even when it requires sacrifice and courage. The dining room table where Richard once told me I didn't belong now hosts weekly family dinners where Emma, Patricia, and I share our lives, committed to building a family based on love, respect, and honesty. I don't feel hatred or satisfaction about Richard's punishment. I feel a deep sense of peace, knowing justice was served and that the people he victimized rebuilt their lives with dignity. The seat at the Christmas dinner table that Richard claimed belonged only to his real daughter became irrelevant. We built our own table, where everyone is welcome based on character and kindness. The family I have now is stronger, more loving than anything Richard ever provided, built on truth instead of lies, support instead of manipulation, and justice instead of exploitation. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone you trusted was secretly working against your best interests? How did you find the courage to stand up and fight back when the odds seemed impossible? I'd love to hear your stories of overcoming betrayal and finding justice in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over adversity, and share it with anyone who might need to know that sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up making us stronger than we ever thought possible. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that no matter how dark things might seem, there's always hope for justice and healing when you have the courage to stand up for what's right.